Call to order City of Trinidad Planning, Zoning and Variance Commission special called session agenda, September 26, 2023, City Council Chambers, City Hall, 135 North Commercial, 5:30 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. I welcome all the people sitting in the audience tonight. Roll call.
Moderano.
Here.
Armijo. Spain. Coker. Rolo. Here. Norris.
Here.
Leone.
Here. Public comments, any? None?
None. And Chair, if you don't mind, I just wanted to mention that Commissioner Coker is out because he has a conflict of interest tonight. So he has, in my mind, an excused absence, and I just wanted to say that.
Mr. Spain did call me up earlier in the day.
Okay, good.
And so he has something to do with his classes tonight.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I just wanted that to be in the record.
So, can you disclose what his conflict of interest was?
I don't know. He felt like he had a conflict of interest.
Okay.
I don't know, Audra or Chair, if you have more information on that.
He had an outside conversation regarding this application and not, probably not directly this application, but indirectly. And so he needed to recuse himself.
Okay. Awesome.
Approval of minutes, May 9th, June 13th, July 7th. I think we're going to have to omit them, right?
What's that?
The approval.
We don't
minutes.
have them in our packet.
Were they loaded in your planning drive previously?
Okay, we'll bring them at the next
We'll
meeting.
just omit them till the next meeting?
Yeah.
All right. We have a motion on that?
I'll move.
Second. Roll call?
Moderano.
Yes.
Armijo.
Yes.
Rolo.
Yes.
Norris.
Yes.
Leone.
Yes. Old business updates on the area-wide planning efforts.
Chair and members of the commission, I can certainly give that update for you all tonight. We had a area-wide planning meeting a week ago Thursday, last Thursday. It was very successful. I think we had over 60 residents in attendance at that meeting, and it was a good opportunity for our consultant Stantec to get some feedback from interested parties. We broke out into 3 different work groups to talk specifically about what we'd like to see for enhancing our downtown. So our consultant, Ryan, will be updating his report to include their perspective, and we're really excited to see Stantec's final report and use that as a tool to move forward. The one thing I think is really important that we highlight is the city has started its own strategic planning initiative. So we've contracted with a company called Managing Results. They're a Colorado-based company. And it's very important to me that they take the results of the area-wide planning initiative and incorporate that into our strategic plan as well. So if you probably noticed, we do a lot of studies here at the city. The strategic plan is probably the best avenue that we have to coordinate all those studies and make sure we're taking into consideration all the hard work that's been done in engaging our community. So that's the update there. We are looking forward to their final report in the next month or so, and I think it's really going to be super helpful for us in how we develop and grow in our urban core. And happy to answer any questions about that initiative.
Any questions?
No questions.
How do they feel about putting a car dealership in the middle of our historic preservation district?
I will not answer that question. That can be for later's discussion.
Okay.
All right. Okay, we're going to go on to public hearing. Staff?
Okay, so the first public hearing on the docket this evening is an application for preliminary and final plat filed on behalf of, well, it's Belong Trinidad. David Spratlin has submitted the application on behalf of the owner of the property. It is for the establishment of an automobile dealership at the southwest corner of East Cedar Street and North Chestnut Street in Trinidad. The applicants have submitted the required documentation, and a staff report was prepared for the Planning Commission's review. I'm not certain what else you generally are told about this. The applicants are present
Yeah.
to speak to their application. At the same time, they also submitted for a conditional use permit to allow the establishment of an automobile dealership in the Historic Preservation Zone District, and for the installation of EV charging stations on the property. So, technically speaking, subdivision could be approved and conditional use permit not approved. Conditional use permit couldn't, it could be, well, subdivision would have to be approved to develop the property in the way that it's proposed. Conditional use permit as well, both would be required for an automobile dealership to be located on the property.
Okay,
I don't know, maybe Michael has something more to
Yeah.
add.
Michael?
Sure. This is the first application that you guys are reviewing under limited impact review. So the limited impact review, as you recall, allows you to review multiple applications. I think that Audrey was just alluding to. There's actually three. There's the conditional use, there's a subdivision, and there's a site plan review, which would deal with just the overall site. And the staff has looked over that application in regards to that, which I think you'll see the detailed notes to that in your memos. But again, Audrey is correct. You are looking at it holistically, but there is three elements that are inside that application. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I'll open the hearing. Anyone in the audience want to come up and speak on this behalf of this application? Come forward.
The applicant, go ahead and speak.
Somebody's got to come forward. Introduce yourself.
Hi. You can hear me here. My name is David Spratland with Commercial Building Services. I'm presenting on behalf of the applicant. See if this will project here to you guys.
I don't think it will.
I don't think it will project.
We can get you an HDMI to connect to this guy.
Okay, that can work.
Yeah. Give you a big long cable.
All right.
Will that work?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something there.
Okay.
Thank you. Staff. In regards to this letter we received tonight, is somebody else going to be on Zoom?
I believe they are on the Zoom call. The top left-hand corner, Tess
David,
Emsley, is on the call. So
best thing to
You
do
can
is
recognize
if you
her
can
after
log
your
into the Zoom.
Okay.
Share your screen.
Yeah.
Do we know the Wi-Fi password?
Mine does.
We're amateurs at this.
The Wi-Fi
apparently.
password? Yes, I do.
Okay, it does. Okay. We'll get you connected and then you can get into the Zoom or the Teams and
My
share your
phone, I
screen.
don't remember it. I don't know where I got it.
She's looking at her phone.
yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Are we doing guest or COT staff? Which one are you going into? COT guest?
Haven't,
Do COT staff, because I don't know what guest is off the top of my head.
Finger that.
Oh,
Let's see. How about this type of
While he's doing that, I'll just announce to Planning Commission and our guests, we're working on some technological updates to this room, so
okay.
thank you for bearing with us.
Yeah.
Okay. Muted? Yep. Cool.
As we're waiting, I'm going to read the application description. The application from Commercial Building Services Incorporated, OBO, Phil Long, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep Ram dealership and owner, Kip Hampton, LLLP, is requesting for a limited impact review of a proposed plot plan, consideration of a preliminary and final plot acceptance, and a CUP for vehicle sales in the HP Historical Preservation District. EV stations and building facade materials in the HP Zone District. The undeveloped property is proposed to be developed as a sales dealership for Phil Long Ford, Chrysler, and Dodge Jeep Ram dealership across the street from the applicant's full-service Phil Long Toyota located at 105 East Cedar Street, Trinidad, Colorado. The proposed site is located at the corner of Cedar Street and Chestnut Street and is currently unaddressed. Trinidad, Colorado 81082. The applicant proposes a preliminary and final plat of 2 parcels, equaling a total of 3.34 acres, to construct a 31,000 square foot building that is 2-story with a parking lot, landscaping with new sidewalks along Cedar Street and a portion of Chestnut Street.
Commission, thank you very much for your introduction there.
So anything you want to bring forward to this council, to this commission, you can bring it forward now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'll first introduce myself. My name is David Spratlan with Commercial Building Services. I also have my design team on hand, or on the virtually. They've joined in case there's any specific questions that I need to direct towards them. In addition, we have Tim Lamb and Gary Pittman here with Phil Long Enterprise. That I'm actually going to turn over to them right now to speak a little bit about the history of this project and Phil Long and
That's fine. Come forward.
Good evening. I'm Tim Lamb. I'm General Counsel for the Phil Long Organization. I think you've all seen me before. I've been coming down here for a lot of years. You know who we are, and you know who Mr. Cimino is. You know his dedication to this town. But this project has been in the works since 2019. We're acquiring the land upon which this is going to be built. We originally acquired a piece from the railroad that's Chestnut and Cedar. Then we acquired over behind the marketplace, or the old Marty Feeds building, from the Loudon family, another piece. And in the middle, then we bought that from the city through the Urban Renewal Authority. There's a middle piece. We acquired that solely for the purpose of trying to construct a dealership here. We understand this is in a historic district, but you know when we build things here, I mean, there's always a few hiccups and bumps, but you see all the things we've done here. So Mr. Cimino was born here, he was raised here. He left, went to the Marines, came back, went to Trinidad Junior College, and then left again to go to DU for college. And since then, he's been in the car business. But he's come back, he still owns a home here. He's committed to this town, and he's committed to trying to make it better, trying to improve the economy, and this dealership will do that. I mean, you've seen the other projects that we built. We have the old Trinidad National Bank, which we call the Champions Building now, the old Marty Feeds building, the Toyota dealership which we built back in 2018. We just opened the Hilton Garden Inn this summer. The Club 14 is another one of our buildings. It used to be the Sanders building. Mount Carmel, which is probably, Mr. Cimino's most proud of, that he took that Catholic church and he turned it into a community center. It's a clinic with Salud family medical centers, plus their dental clinic. I tell you all this to show you and to reaffirm to you that we're here to stay. So we really want to work with the city, we want to work with this commission, we want to build things that are beneficial to this community and continue for it to grow. You know, we brought people down here who have been also big, good partners of this community, like Dana Crawford from Denver. She's helped with Fox Theater. I guess the East School. She just turned into some housing. We bought the Holy Trinity School and Convent a few years ago from the Archdiocese, and we've been working on that effectively to turn that into apartments and possibly a small hotel as part of which it was the convent. So all of these developments, we're trying to focus most of what we do in the downtown area to bring this downtown to what it used to be when Mr. Cimino grew up. This town was thriving, there was more people here, it had a lot more industry, but this dealership will add jobs. We are currently working with the Urban Renewal Authority to acquire the old Hughes Lumber, the Power and Light building. We were the only applicant. A week ago, I spent a lot of time on the phone with Mr. Grego and the city's council to try to get that done. And that will be ultimately part of this facility too, for offices and things of that nature. So there's a lot that we have to deal with here, which is what Mr. Spratlin's going to do with you and talk to you about the plans and the drawings and how we plan to build it. But I just want to reaffirm that we are here to help, to be a good partner with the city, and to, we'll listen to all your comments, your suggestions, your criticisms, and from there, try to get something that works for everybody. We understand some of the restrictions that come with the historic district, but we've worked with the manufacturers on that. That is one of our restrictions, is they want it to look like every other dealership they have throughout the country. We're trying to adapt it so that it has some of that look, but it has something that's more fitting with Trinidad. So, it's, as I say, our commitment here is, right now we currently have about 150 employees in this town, and we hope for that to grow. This dealership will bring a lot more traffic to and people down to the downtown area. When we bought Cook Motors, Mr. Cook Jeff was selling about 20 to 25 cars a month. We're at 45 to 50 now, and with this dealership we hope to be somewhere around 90 cars a month, which means we bring people from other communities, we bring people from New Mexico, people from eastern Colorado, all to help this community economically. And we're not, as I said, we're not going anywhere. We're here in the long haul. Mr. Cimino is committed to this, and he's shown that for the last 15 years. So we just want to be able to develop this the way the manufacturers want us to, but with changes so that it fits all of your requests, your desires, what the community wants. We want to build that community partnership that we have built for the last 15 years. We want to keep it going. So, this is the first time you're going to really see these things. But we're here to work with you, and that's what I want to convey to you. So, it's. I don't think I need to go through all the community contributions that we've done, but there's a lot of them, So I'll turn this back to Mr. Spratlin. But whatever it is we have to do to make changes or follow suggestions, we're here with open ears to work with you. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. We'll continue on with the presentation. So I just want to show you a little bit of eye candy here about some of their other dealerships, just to see some examples of the high quality design that they do, both in the architecture. These exact photos don't necessarily stipulate some of the landscape, but they definitely pride themselves on having very well maintained properties. In addition, there's quite a few existing facilities here, within the Trinidad area that they're committed to and working on that I know Mr. Lamb had already touched on a little bit here. But why we're here today is primarily to discuss the preliminary and final plat, as well as the conditional use permits, as Audrey had mentioned already in her staff presentation. What I thought would be helpful to go over and try to help describe our project is actually go through the subdivision review standards with you and how that applies to our project. So, as Chairman had already mentioned, this is an undeveloped property and it's proposed to be developed as a vehicle sales and service facility. It's across the street from the Toyota dealership on the corner of Cedar and Chestnut. It has 2 parcels that equate to roughly 3.34 acres. It can be composed of a 31,000 square foot facility that has service areas, service drives, service consultation areas, sales room areas, business areas, as well as EV chargers in the parking lot, inventory storage, customer parking, a little bit of display parking, and as well as landscaping throughout the facility. So touching on the first aspect here, the subdivision review standard, this project area is consistent with the land use code. It's a use by right, a conditional use by right for auto sales and service. And the project is also consistent with the comprehensive plan and falls under the reinvestment area. As you can see here, this includes some of the undeveloped or underutilized land, the additional employment opportunities, and to attract visitors and residents to the area for the services. Lastly, this also acts as a catalyst for recreation, for people to upfit their vehicles and be able to make those journeys to the nearby destinations. It's helpful to also understand the character that surrounds this particular area and project. What's important to realize here is all the facilities, or all the structures, both to the north, south, east, and west, are 2-story in nature. In addition, the particular structures that are to the south as well as east also have their rear setback lines facing this facility, so their front facades do not face this facility. They're also in 2-story natures. The properties to the east, to the south along Elm Street are also raised about 8 to 10 feet, so it's a much higher elevation, as you can see here in this lower picture here. So this building is also kind of shielded a little bit by the natural topography here. And then lastly, across the street to the north is the existing Toyota dealership that's clad in ACM material, where the facilities or structures to the north and east are brick material. Now, following the guidance from the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, and in particular Standard 9, it's helpful to look at how new construction needs to be built in a sensitive area like the historic district here. And it states, new construction needs to be built in a manner that shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. So this particular facility, we've tried to create a historic in nature backdrop for the 2 factory dealerships, both the Chrysler as well as the Ford. You can see the Ford area here on the right and the Chrysler area here on the left, and then the historic nature, a 2-story structure that backdrops in a setback from that front facade to really create a bigger scale and lower the scale of the actual dealerships themselves. Now, to join these 2 facilities, the Ford as well as the Chrysler, Mr. Chimino had a great idea of creating and really emphasizing that Trinidad red brick and some of the architectural details that are found throughout Trinidad. So we created this upfitter space that joins those 2 facilities, both in the function of the space as well as architecturally, to kind of combine those, create a central focal point for your entrance into the site, as well as for the customer entrance. We further played upon the majority building material here, of the red brick, by adding brick rosettes along the second story as well as the upfitter space. We've also added detailing at the top cornice of both the upfitter and that second story space, and coins along the corners of both the upfitter and the second story brick space. In addition to the brick, the glazing and storefront glazing is a secondary material here. Now, this approach has brought the building design to fit within the district's intent to recognize the history of Trinidad, and also allow this design to utilize and mix the different building elements, and really further define the continuing story of Trinidad in its historic time period of significance of innovation and growth. As Mr. Land had mentioned, this facility will employ anywhere up to 25 to 30 employees to start with. Its hours of operation between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and will be closed on Sundays. And then as far as the open space consideration, Phil Long Enterprise is open to a fee in lieu of open space dedication. When we talk about environmental quality and concerns for a project of this nature, stormwater is one of the biggest elements to really consider. Inside the building, they capture any kind of drainage or floor elements with a sand oil interceptor to maintain the safety of the sanitary system. But outside the building, stormwater is always a concern for projects of this nature. What we've done here is actually look at combining the existing storm drainage facility that is to the northeast of the Toyota dealership and improving it and enlarging its capacity so it can handle both the discharge from the Toyota facility as well as this facility. Some of the things I also want to talk about are some of the negative impacts that we've tried to mitigate for this particular project here. As you can see, we've addressed transportation and access. You can see the pink arrows here. We've had 4 access points into the facility. We've provided non-potable water filling station per city's request down on the southeast corner down here. We've also relocated the trash enclosure to the southwest corner adjacent to Maple Street, away from some of the residential areas along Elm. We've also incorporated ample spaces for overflow of snow storage within the facility itself. You can see those in the light blue areas here. Lastly, for one of the neighbors to the south, we provide an access way here, as you can see with this yellow highlighted area here.
What was the yellow area?
That is an access drive to one of the neighbors to the south.
Oh, okay.
Provide access from Maple Street to their rear of their facility. Lighting is another concern here with the city standards and codes. All the lights that we are proposing are full cutoff fixtures, also known as dark sky compliant. All lighting levels that you see are actually fall off at 0 foot candles at the property line. Furthermore, we followed the standards within the city code so that the foot candle underneath the fixture itself is at 10 foot candles. And just to give you an example of what that means, per the Illumination Engineers Society of North America, for an activity level of this nature and this project type, they typically recommend a 40 foot candle level along the street presence with anywhere with 30 to 35 foot candle interior of the space. So our light levels at max is 10 foot candles across here. So our average foot candle is much lower than that. So we're really sensitive on providing that uniform lower lighting across this site. In addition to that, what you see here, the yellow highlights on this screen are all the fixtures. The ones with the red circles are the fixtures that we've identified for our security or non-operating hours lighting scheme. So that's 25% of the overall lighting fixtures. And we've push them towards the perimeter of the facility, towards Cedar and Chestnut, and try to keep them away from that southern edge along Elm Street where we have abutting property owners. Last thing I'd like to touch on here is the landscape. We've provided enhanced landscaping relative to the adjacent properties here. Along Cedar Street and Chestnut, we have small retaining walls as well as shrubs and street trees. We screened our trash enclosure that's located down here in the southeast corner with not only retaining walls, but also shrubs and trees. We've also provided an enhanced landscape area all across that southern border where we do abut property owners to really screen that facility. Even though we are down about 8 to 10 feet, our finished floor is below that grade, we're still providing ample landscaping to screen this facility. Lastly, when we talk about screening, rooftop units or HVAC units are all screened on top of the roof, so they're not viewed from any of the directions on this property. And that concludes a formal presentation, but of course, I'm available for any questions or comments you may have.
How is the backside of that building going to look as far as, you showed us the front side, but how is the backside of that building they'll be able to see from Elm Street? How's the backside of that building going to
So
be?
from Elm Street, there's limited visibility with existing structures. From the end of Maple Street, you might see some, but it is sunk down, about 10 feet, as well as we have a lot of landscaping across there. So I can show you kind of a render of what that rear elevation would look like, but it is very minimal, I would say, view from Elm Street just due to the structures that are across there. So the backside is mostly service facility. That's where all the operations are happening. On the front side is where we're showcasing the 2 factory automotive dealerships, as well as the upfitter space and that second story brick backdrop. Hopefully that helps to answer some of your questions.
Mr. Norris?
My question is, why put a car dealership in the middle of a historic preservation area right next to the river? I mean, why?
Tim, do you want to address this a little bit? You might have more.
Well,
insight.
first, between the river and this project is another car dealership.
I realize that.
Yeah, there's another car dealership. The history of Trinidad,
That doesn't match the city at all either.
that's not in the historic district.
Right, does not match that.
Yeah, but that's why it sits back so far. So when we built that and we went through planning and zoning, that it was moved back. The history of Trinidad, there used to be 7 car dealerships in the downtown area back 80 years ago.
Okay.
So there is a history of having dealerships there. What we're trying to do is make an area where people can come. You've got 2 dealerships. They're convenient for people. We're trying to get people off the highway. We're trying to, and this is an area that has been blighted for 100 years. It used to be railroad tracks. So we pulled all the rails. But it is a place that we're not adding something that's different, we're adding something that's complementary to what's there already by adding another car dealership. And it's, I would say it's in the historic district, but it's in the edge of the historic district. And if we don't build something there, it's gonna stay a blighted area.
You're selling 90 cars a month. There's 8,000 people in Trinidad. In 10 months, if every single person will have bought a car. I mean,
But
That's only 90 cars.
when was the last time that you drove down on the freeway and said, hey, I think I'll stop in and buy a car?
Well, it's not just for purchase, it's for service, parts. But at 90 cars a month, when we reach that, it's gonna take 10 years for everybody in this town to buy a car. So you're selling, at 90 cars, you're selling 1,008 cars, 80 cars a month, or a year. So to get up to everybody here, it's gonna take you 8 years. So it's, the real, I understand is, it's in the downtown, but the intent of it is to bring people to the downtown, to use that land that has not been used. We had that same, when we built the Toyota store, that was also, we tore down 2 buildings that were condemned, that just sat there for years and years and years. This one doesn't have that, but we think we're improving the area where it sits, you won't see it because of the buildings on commercial, you won't see it right away till you get to Cedar, and it'll be sitting back quite a ways. So it's not the primary focus. But it seems to make sense to us, being in this business, to have a place where people can come where both dealerships are in the same place. It's more convenient for people, and it's really trying to just revitalize the downtown area to help do that. As I said, with our other projects, we've done that with the Marty Feeds, the Snyder Brewery is something we have plans for in the future. That's been empty for how many years? It's got to start somewhere. And I understand what you're saying, but we have to start somewhere to keep this ball rolling to develop the downtown and bring people back here. As I say, the school and convent for Holy Trinity, we want to put housing in there. That's convenient then to have these dealerships close by too. So it's sort of our master plan involves many areas here, and the dealership is just one more that helps revitalize. I know it's kind of a general answer, but it really is. I know most of the people, when you go to bigger cities, a lot of car dealerships have moved from the downtown areas way out outside of town. Part of that is because the land is more available out there. And as dealers carry heavier inventories, they need more acreage. I mean, I've been involved in the auto business for 45 years, and as an attorney for car dealers and manufacturers, we've reduced our inventories because of COVID, so we don't need as much land as we used to. But you've all seen those dealerships with just seas of cars. That's not what this is going to do. We're not proposing that here. We want something that fits the community, that is convenient for the people who live here. And so that's what we're trying to do. Any other questions?
Ms. Rolls?
I've got one question. Does anybody remember what that back behind Marty Feeds looked like before?
I do.
I mean, and it stunk. I mean, that feed store, that feed market, they made feed, it caught fire one time. That whole back part was a mess. It looks nice now. Even there's nothing there, it looks nice. So I think it's in the right direction that we're going, cleaning it up. I think that's great.
Thank you.
Mr. Armijo?
Anything else?
Somebody else?
Mr. Spradlin?
My second round is to try to get it to, so if it's going to be there, can you work harder to hit our design standards than the Toyota dealership, which you already mentioned that you're not going to because because the corporate car companies are dictating what stylistic things go in there. For example, brushed metal on the as a facade for. I mean, it's great for a car dealership. It's not in keeping with the historic preservation district or the flavor of the community that you claim you want to help support. I mean, we're trying to go for an artistic a community, and yet one that's thriving. And so, if you could meet us halfway by working harder to try to match the design standards that we've already laid out, that would be very.
Where's the picture?
I think you're talking about historic preservation standards then?
Yeah. So one of the things, so if you look at this, you can see, and Dave spoke about this, the amount of brick that has been added to make it look
But no, I
Much
I
more-
appreciate, no, I did,
Yes.
and the details in the architecture, I realize that you guys have come
Yeah.
a long way, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, the Toyota store is just silver and glass. It's steel and glass, and I get that. We've tried to get away from that, but yet maintaining what the manufacturers want in this frontage. This is their brand, and Ford's this way. This is what they want for their brands. This is all glass, but we try to incorporate all this brick, so that it meets more of the historic standards that you're asking about.
Yeah, I think if you look at scale and massing and proportion, it's definitely in alignment with the adjacent properties on Commercial Street, even though that's, some, 400 feet away or so. But it is in line with that scale. In addition, that second story brick really pushes down the scale and the perception of those factory dealers, the Chrysler as well as the Ford. It's really trying to emphasize and create that backdrop to create a bigger, higher priority, higher emphasis hierarchy with the red brick over the factory materials there.
Okay, that was the attempt, okay. Okay, thank you.
As I said, we have limitations based on the manufacturers. We've had countless hours with them to develop what is acceptable. And there may be some other things that might be possible, and if that's required, then we go back to them and we say, we need a little more. It's not impossible that Chrysler or Stellantis is what they're called now, or Ford will make some additional changes, but we've spent, I don't know how many hours with them trying to get these approved. So, but that is one of the things you won't see in other dealerships. You'll see it's exactly what you said. It's all metal and it's all glass.
In regards to your signage, where's that going to be?
So we do have a separate signage plan on there. You can see the signs there on the building itself. The signage we try to put in a closer proportion to what is allowed in the code. If you're, I can actually pull it up. It's probably in your packet somewhere. But I can pull up the plan here. You can see this plan. So we do have identified.
Our packets are complete, but they're
Yeah.
so small. They're so small to read.
Yes, understandable.
That sometimes I use a
So there's-
magnifying glass.
There's obviously going to be internal signage, in the, small, 4-foot height range to direct traffic internal of the site. On the periphery, we went with one of the smallest kind of applicable signs that we can go with the dealers, and it's an overall height of about 14 feet, 7 feet wide. So looking across the street at Toyota, that you can see from far away. This you really wouldn't see until you're progressing down Cedar Street and really see it. So it's not going to be obtrusive from Commercial Street, but you would see it once you turn down Cedar Street.
It's not a 40-foot sign.
Yeah. So again, trying to be sensitive to the location and the district itself.
Now, is it gonna have a lot to do with that alley right behind the marketplace? Is that alley gonna be completely wide open?
It's going to stay the way it is. It's going to stay. So Mill Street, that will stay the same. That parking lot that you see there behind the Marty Feeds building will stay the same. Because we have a detention pond to the east. So that will not change.
Service trucks will be able to get in and out of there
Yes.
without any problem.
Yes, yes. So, as you know, I think as you know, we have an agreement with the city to have those, to have that street closed. We have a license with them to put tables out there. So that will remain the same. And then you go through the parking lot to get to Mill Street, to go behind like Mr. Griego's building and to go back out to Plum.
You were talking about a gate.
Not a gate?
Is that a gate?
What part of the gate? Oh, no.
I'm sorry?
We're talking about the letter that's asking
Yeah,
for
there
the
was,
food
there
truck.
was a letter received from Tess Emsley and Sean Rudman, who are property owners at 225 East Elm Street. I'll read it into the record. It's dated September 25th, 2023, City of Trinidad, attention Christie Hall. To the Planning, Zoning, and Variance Commission, we are owners of one of the two properties that border the proposed car dealership, 225 East Elm Street. We are attending this hearing via Zoom. Our concerns are as follows. 1, we require ample alley access to our back gate. We have a food truck that we need to back in and out of the gate. 2, we request that car dealership lights are dimmed at night. Thank you for reviewing our concerns. Kind regards, Tess Emsley and Sean Rudman, and they provide their address. And I believe Ms. Emsley is online, so you can call on her if you have any questions.
So I think, if I can show you, I believe it's one of these people here. And so there's really no alley back there. I mean, it's not a designated or dedicated alley, but there's a curb cut right here that's to the north of the water station. And so they would be able to get in through here to access the back of their property.
Tim, also from Maple coming in.
And then for Maple, yeah, if you come in this way, there's access back here. So they have ways to get in. I think that, like I said, they have a food truck that they park back there.
Yep.
Well, I don't live down here, but I've never seen a food truck there, but maybe it's occasional. Maybe it's occasional. So they would have access from 2 points to be able to get back to the back of their property.
Which property did you say is theirs?
Pardon?
Which property did you say?
I think it's, I don't know, I think it might be this one right here,
Okay.
is what I believe. I don't know them, and I don't know all the addresses, I don't have them all memorized, but
Right.
I think it's this property here,
We can pull it up on a map.
225.
Yeah, just so we can just look at that. I'll share the screen too for those on the call.
So would they have legal access to be able to access the back of their property, or how?
We can provide access to them. I mean, I don't know, we've done property searches, and I know no alleys back there
Right.
that were dedicated,
From a
because it used to be a railroad property,
Right.
where behind theirs was railroad, and we bought it from the railroad.
I'm trying to visualize it in my mind. I can see the back gate,
Yeah.
and I just don't remember what it looked like, how they
Yeah,
accessed
there
it.
is just a chain link fence with a gate.
Right.
Beyond that dirt, so now there would actually be road.
Yeah, there'll be a paved area. So,
That East Main.
well, that's not, yeah, not Main.
Oh, sorry.
225, it's
Elm.
Plum.
It's one?
Elm, I'm sorry.
225.
He's down.
Sorry. 225 Elm. Okay. Maybe.
There's actually a picture of it in the staff report,
Okay, so right.
So,
page 6.
And then let's do satellite view, and let me share this with the people on the Zoom call.
okay.
We might need to stop sharing from the,
Yeah.
You closing that?
Trying to figure out how to.
Okay, there we go. And then we'll go to share. There it is. Thanks, Michael. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so cedar, chestnut, I believe it's this, is it showing this one?
No.
Where the
So,
red dot is.
This is
Commissioner
227.
no, Commissioner Armijo
This is
pointed out,
200.
it's in the staff report on page 6, and
Okay.
it is that, where the red dot is on the right-hand side.
Okay.
The one that's kind of
So it's right.
elongated towards the back, where your thumb
Okay.
is.
So it's that particular building, okay.
So we
So
were-
Not that one.
The
this,
one to the right.
Nope, the one on the
this
right.
one here,
The one on the right. Keep going. To the right. Right there.
this
Yep.
one, okay. So,
It says 227?
This doesn't have the,
227 looks like it's the storage,
This is-
that metal storage structure.
yeah, this one shows 225, but right here. But if this is the building,
That's the one that's
Yeah.
showing on the staff report.
We might ask if the person who wrote that letter is on Zoom tonight, that they raise their hand and,
Yeah.
there she, I think
I just had a little trouble with sound tonight, so I apologize for that. But thank you for addressing my letter.
Of course, yes. Can you clarify which building?
Can you
we're
share
talking
which
about?
property is
Yeah.
Yes. See here. So 225 East Elm. There's the metal storage building, and then there is a patio and another building, which is my neighbor's property, and then 225 is the smaller building to the left of that, just before the empty yard.
Okay, right, so just this one.
No.
It's
No.
Right there.
Yeah,
It's that one, yeah.
Just to the left of that building right there, where the red marker is.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you'd have access from two different entry
places.
points, from,
Yes.
from the curb cut just above the water.
So you can see what's designed and what you have is there's going to be a drive here that will go kind of this way. Bernadette Dickinson owns this particular property, and then we purchased a point from her that was about 3,800 square feet because it stuck straight up in here that she had. So we've agreed. She has a little landing here that some time ago the city took her drive away. So it's just a pedestal, and we're going to make so she has a drive from the back of her building. So that road will drive. You'll still have access, and this lady will have access to her building too.
So has Maple?
Okay, so from Maple Street, there will be a drive that comes
There'll be a
around.
drive from Maple, and then there'll
Okay.
be a curb cut on Chestnut to come in just to the north of the water station. So,
Okay, so the curb will be cut over there.
right.
And if you had a food truck, you'd have
Okay.
full circulation, you wouldn't even have to back up.
Right. So,
Great, okay, thank you.
so basically Maple comes in here and the paved ends about here. And then
Okay.
it's field. So the roadway, the driveway that Mr. Sproutlin has designed will give her access.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So can you take that? Yeah, okay.
Can
So
I
you
ask a
can-
question? Before you get rid of that map?
Yeah.
Okay. My name's Tammy Tamborelli, for the record. I am a neighbor on your back
Across the street.
here. I would like to know what the planning commission is going to do with Maple, if they're going to start maintaining it. It hasn't been maintained at all. Do I just touch it and it goes down?
You
or-
can scroll it, yeah.
So it's actually paved down to here, somewhat. It's pretty crummy. So I would just like to know what they're going to do on Maple to where it connects up here with the Plum and Elm intersection. And I would also like to know where the EV charging stations will be positioned.
And Chair, if I may, so as far as the street maintenance, that's under the purview of the city council, not the planning and zoning commission.
Okay.
But certainly, if you all want to talk about the EV charging stations, that would be a good question to answer tonight.
So just so you know, there will be a sidewalk from the edge of our property to the building that we'll be constructing, to our building. And then we haven't really had any conversations with the city about that section of Maple. And I know it does need some work. So,
Where it turns to dirt, that becomes part of the lot. So that will be paved and with an entrance there. Potentially also service could come in and out. So
yeah.
improving that road
So
would be
EV stations.
helpful
Yeah.
to our
Can you show that?
Yeah, I don't know if our screen's being presented right now or not.
It is. Let me close this and we'll pull it up.
Okay, put it close that.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yes, so we have some EV stations. Let me go over this. I got an EV station located on the front row parking, so that'd be like a public use EV station. Right in this area here.
They're
Yeah, you
Closer
see
to
the red
the
dot?
Toyota.
right here.
Yeah, right along Cedar.
So this area.
Okay.
We'd also have a level 2 charger located in front of the Chrysler building. A level 2 charger located in front of the Ford building, over here on this side. And then lastly, we would have a service EV charger located to the south of our service drive.
What's the distinction you made between the different charging stations?
Between level 3 and level 2?
Yeah.
Level 3 is a much faster charge. That's kind of like your equivalent or similar to like a Tesla supercharger where you
Okay.
charge it up in a matter of minutes versus hours. So that's one of those ones that would be along the public street along Cedar, but access from the site, of course. And then level 2s are a much longer term charging facility, much longer time to charge up a vehicle.
I just have a question.
Tammy, did you get your questions answered?
So one of the charging stations, if I'm correct, is the 15th back here by Maple?
Yes, and that is really just for service, so that's not easily
Okay.
accessed by, say, public. That's really accessed for the
So
service
we're looking
department.
here,
Okay.
here. And then this
My
here.
only concern on that is that we run semis, and we have semis that back into that lot. That was on the map. It might be easier for you to visualize, but I just want to make sure that Maple is going to stay its width that it is now. I'm a small business owner. I'm not going to make anybody do or not do what they want with their own land that they've purchased. If it meets the specifications that the planning and zoning wants you to meet, then go for it. But I do need to protect my business, which has been there for over 30 years. And I need to make sure that I can get tractor trailers in my back lot and into my garage.
She accesses the back of her garage through that street,
Yep.
okay?
So we're not,
And she's got 40, 45-foot long trailers that she's got back in there. Not only into her garage, but also into the lot to the north of her garage. I'm thinking that she wants to make sure that she still be able to do that. That's what she's here for, I think.
Yeah, without congestion, that's why I wanted to make sure about the charging stations, that there wasn't gonna be a lot of congestion there with people trying to get in and out. Just because I need to you need to run your business, I need to still run mine.
I would say Maple, in essence, is maintaining its same width as it currently is with the addition of a sidewalk next to it. There's no curb cut off of Maple going into our facility except for at the very end where it terminates at our said property. So that wouldn't have any impact on getting access to the back of your building. In addition, if I'm understanding correct, the yard here to the north is also, we provided that 15-foot access road to the north of your facility.
Okay.
They speak in the correct terms there, Tim?
Yes, so the edge here, this is where, right around here is where the access is into the power and light, Hughes Lumber.
Right, and we're right next to
Yours
that.
is to the south of it,
Right.
and we're not affecting anything
Okay.
there at all. So the width, we're not proposing changing that width or doing anything with that remain a street. So that isn't gonna affect you at all.
And there will be a curb cut into power and light. I don't know if that helps or.
Well, there's already one with the gate.
Yeah, there's a gate there now.
I guess my main concern is that when you all did the long Toyota building, we used to be able to go through there from Maple. I realized that it wasn't, after speaking with someone at the city, that wasn't a through road.
Right.
But when that all went in, a curb got put in and that access got eliminated. So I only have the one access. I just want to
Okay.
make sure that there aren't going to be curbs that are gonna, that are.
Yeah,
gonna
we're not
impact.
proposing, the sidewalk is not gonna be on your side of Maple, it's on the other side.
And then as far as your trash, you said you were gonna have your trash over in that corner with some trees and things.
Correct.
Um,
And their access would be off of Chestnut, coming in to access that, so not off of Maple.
Okay, okay. Sounds good.
Can I bring up an access issue or a point? The access off of Chestnut, can you review that one more time? Because your current plan is showing that there is a curb that is being installed on those southern parking spaces that are in light blue. And there was the intent there to allow for access to the back of those lots on the southern end, and therefore does that curb need to be eliminated and that's something different put in place?
So this parking lot would be a curb typically, but we can look at some options.
So you guys stated that off of Chestnut, somebody could enter and come through the back, correct? Or did I misunderstand that? Because I believe that was one of the questions of those property owners to the south.
Yeah, so I think you're referencing right here, this property access right here.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah, so there is a curb proposed there right now. One of the things to consider is there is a significant grade difference across there. I'm going to say that's probably in the neighborhood of a 14% slope is my guess based on the current survey that we had done.
Okay, so there is an access from Chestnut then. The properties will all access from the easement that is being provided. 10-foot access road.
There's access to one of the properties off of that access road.
Okay,
So this property here, yeah.
But not for 225.
but the question, I believe, the letter was that middle property, the small building, and having access to this, so the smaller structure next to the longer one, I believe it was the person in the letter.
There.
Yes. So the access would.
We'll have to look at an access through that property to make that connection here. So we could certainly look at redoing some of the grading along there to provide that connectivity from that access road across the property into the back of 225.
Because right now, they do access from the other side. Right?
Yes, that's what
But they're traveling across your property.
correct.
Correct.
There's
Yeah,
no
I think they're
curb.
traveling across, this way to kind of
Okay.
get into there.
Because it's not a legal alley, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So what we will look at is whether there's space here, so where the red dot now is, to use that for access this way. If there's enough space, which I think there may be, we may be able to just have an alley, just an access area right there.
What does the blue represent that's going along?
That's the water station.
Easement for the water station.
Easement for the water station.
The whole blue,
The dark blue.
The dark blue.
And the
okay, but the
turquoise.
water station's just one small little.
Right, but the
There's a-
city took a bigger easement, we gave them a
Okay.
bigger easement.
A little
Because
turnout
sometimes they
space,
have
you know.
trailers and things, so
Yeah.
they want it big enough to handle a
And the
trailer behind it.
turquoise represents again?
That's snow storage.
Oh,
So we just have to look at that, and we can, if there's enough space, we can provide that access to the back. And my memory is that probably wouldn't encroach on that. So,
Okay. Sorry, look at that.
So just to summarize, the first option that was suggested was coming in off the yellow access easement, but then you would also need to plat on your subdivision plat an easement across the back portion to allow for access to the middle lot. Nope. If you were gonna, sorry. Yep. Move. Yeah. They would come. Yep. So right there would need to be a platted easement right there on the back corner of that lot too. for access. So that would need to be added to the subdivision plat. Does that make sense? If option A was the solution to providing access?
Well, that's a separate property owner. So we,
No, I understand that property will still need to get access from the neighboring property as well, but as you described, doing some grading to keep the access as far back to the south or to the north on there would also require an access easement on your land on the back of that middle lot. Does that make sense? That corner?
yes, on the corner.
Yep. Right there. Yep. So I think this would be a recommended condition that the planning commission consider is to update the plat to show that additional easement area for access. So if that's the option that is pursued. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, thanks.
Any other questions?
Ed, do you have any questions?
Mr. Marano, any more questions?
I don't have any more questions. I was just wondering if Eddie had some questions.
I don't have questions, but I have some comments.
Love to hear.
Now, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, thank you for allowing me to come up. My name is Ed Riego. I am a property owner and occupant of the building on the corner of Plum and Commercial Street. I'm not an abutting property owner, but I'm very in close proximity to all these developments that are taking place down there. My comments tonight are to encourage you to, at this point, I don't know if that's to give a revision to the subdivision plan that was just mentioned by Mr. Yearling, or with the conditional use permit. But I'll reiterate what Mr. Moderano just said a few minutes ago. If you can remember back when, and it's not that many years ago, but if you can remember back when and go and remember what was and what was not on that lot that the proposed development is on, you're going to know that at that particular time there was a feed store. The feed store closed, it ultimately burned, and it was all removed. But you can actually, if you don't remember it, you can actually go on Google, start at the Toyota dealership, come up Commercial. You can swing around, and this is pretty old, but it wasn't very long ago that it was still available on Google. And you can go down Mill Street, and you can basically see even my old 2007 Ford truck that I had at that time is in that picture. And you can look back and see what was all there at that time. That included, there was no Cedar Street. That's one thing that, if you don't recall, there was no Cedar Street at one time. That was nothing but a dirt pathway that went over railroad tracks. There was a lot. So what's there now is a development that is very, very beneficial to the area where I operate. There's traffic there. It's an east-west corridor off of Commercial Street. So what's there? The developments have brought benefit to the area. The development of this other dealership across the street from the Toyota dealership, and in keeping with the standards for historic preservation, I think they're demonstrating that that's going to be as such. So I think it's a consideration. It does have merit for where it is. So I encourage that it be given consideration by this commission, so that it can have a development in the future that will provide property that is undeveloped right now, that borders on with what it would be blighting conditions. So I think that needs to be considered. And so my words is not questioned, it's my comments is what I've been able to observe. Obviously, I'm a lifer in the community, so I can remember back what was and what is not there now. So, the other thing too, like on historic preservation standards, I don't know how much you can preserve on an empty lot. It's new construct, it's not preservation. I don't know the true definition of the standard of the preservation, but it's not affecting a historical existing building at this point. So yes, there are surrounding properties that are of historic significance. So that has to be protected. But as far as what else would you put on there, you know, to be able to gain that, you know, you would have to construct a new old-looking building, I guess, that's what it would be. But those are my comments, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Grego.
Can I address, just come on, kind of piggyback on Mr. Grego? Just so you know, that he mentioned Cedar Street wasn't a street. We partnered with the city. The city got a DOLA grant of, I think, of $1 million. We paid a little over $300,000 to complete Cedar Street. And then through tax revenues of the Toyota store, we repaid the city additional money, I believe, $90,000. So it didn't cost the city any money to build Cedar Street. So I just wanted to let you know that, you know, again, those are those partnerships that I was talking about earlier that are really important to the city.
I think that you also put in utilities there at the same time.
We did.
Help at the
We
same
did.
time, at the same time you did that.
Yeah.
Put in new utilities to accommodate what you were putting there for Toyota.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna enunciate something that Mr. Grego said. I've been a lifetime member here too. Not that part of the lot, but a partial part of that lot was a junkyard.
Mhm.
There was a scale there. And anybody that took junk to the junkyard across the street where the city garage is now, or where the park is now, you went over that scale. And on the other side of that scale was the railroad tracks that went to Brankoff Marty's. So improving that is basically a plus compared to what it was way back when. And I'm talking about the 60s, late 50s and early 60s. Us as kids used to get a wagon, fill it full of bottles, because he bought bottles, or fill it full of whatever you could fill it full of, and you go down there and he'd give you a penny for the bottles. But you had to put the wagon over the scale, and the scale was a 50-ton scale, so we don't know what you were getting. I just wanted to bring that forward as far as what the property was way back when.
But it did, Cedar Street being developed gave access to Chestnut, which is a way to go east that wasn't really there before. So I just wanted to give you that additional information. Thank you.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yes.
So on the one that's C 2.2,
Okay.
it shows
Share that sheet, page C 2.2.
yes.
Let's share my screen here.
It shows the access that you're giving to, I can't remember the property owner's name.
Bernadette Dickinson?
Thank you.
Yes.
And it looks like you have quite a bit of infrastructure that's going to be built. I don't know how much would it affect you guys trying to move and access all the way back over here? Like from that picture, it didn't look like it would be hard, but from this one, it looks like an impossible feat. I don't know what those represent.
So now that I'm saying up here next to you.
Right here,
Mhm.
see this?
Yes.
This is somebody else's property,
Correct.
and then here's her property,
Mhm.
right here, right?
Correct.
So how, because this is part of your charging stations, how could it be
Yeah.
easily done without putting an undue burden on you guys to make access this way? Seems like it would be easier. I mean, I'm.
Yeah, the difficult thing as well with this said property and our property, there's about a 8 to 10 foot grade difference across there. So it's looking at trying to create enough slope so you can provide that grade, and really from
From
here
here it'd be easier,
across.
right?
Well, it's a shorter grade, so it'll be steeper. I think coming off Maple, it'll be a much more gradual.
I'm sorry, can you show us on the
Yes.
online shop? Just, we have some people online, I want to make sure they're here in the
So-
conversation.
Yeah, we're speaking of about the, I'm not sure I can,
No worries.
see if I can draw on here. Actually, I'm gonna go back to, this is gonna be easier to show, I think. So we're still discussing providing access to this said property right here.
Okay.
Providing access off of Chestnut here is one potential option we can look at. The thing to be in consideration here is that the grade difference between this property here and right over here is about 8 to 10 feet, which is why we have retaining walls in here to help support and transition from this element down to our parking area.
So what is representing the retaining wall?
This line right here is the retaining wall. You can see this little faint line.
Okay.
Try to zoom in a little bit more. Yeah, that's as much as I can zoom in. So it backs up against the parking lot and then follows the radius of our access drive here. My feeling is that the length that we have on this access drive here up to this property provides a longer area, so we have a lower slope to access that. And then it'd be a means of providing an additional area here where we build up the existing site to provide that connectivity to this site.
Are we in the same boat here, coming across? Because if you came in the existing curb cut, went here, could you access it like that?
Yeah, you can see here, we have a 16% slope from where you see where it says match existing 6011. That's existing elevation there. So we have about a 16% slope from that property down to our parking lot on that east side.
So those last two parking stalls right here to here, there's a 16% slope.
Correct. So following that path here is a much more gradual path, as you can see, that we're able to create and slope up to that property just to the west of the property we're discussing.
How does she access it now if you got a 16% drop?
That's a good question.
Not sure.
Yeah.
It's like going off a cliff.
But it doesn't seem that way. Like,
No, it does.
I'm trying to put this all together in my mind, but it does not appear like it's that big of a, she drives in from that side and she comes in the back. Obviously, she's crossing over your property because there's no legal access, but she does come in from that side.
From this side?
Yes.
It's how it's, you know, it looks like there's a curb cut. I think we gotta walk it.
Yeah, we do. Because you're correct, it doesn't seem that steep coming off the Chestnut. There is a slope, but it's a gradual slope down the Chestnut. Yeah.
So, Michael, I have a question for you. Does that have to be decided now where that goes?
You can make it a condition of approval to approve the subdivision that a amenable solution is found for access to that property. I do think the other thing I was going to suggest is because the dealership is already interacting with that property owner to provide access through there, is looking for a reciprocal easement to that other property to allow access across the back, to allow that section of the dealership for the 23.3 to be flattened a little bit. Yep, right there. And then do a reciprocal if you come straight across the back of that lot, where the access is going to be granted on the private property that you don't own. Yep, right there. To have that as a condition that the dealership works with that property owner to do a reciprocal agreement with that property, and then creating a compliant easement in that corner. So I think that can be a condition of approval, and obviously if that condition isn't met, then we would have to consider the application. But at least tonight, that allows them to move forward. Allows them to move forward and continue the path of trying to get development on the property. So you can do that as a condition of approval, and then obviously if that condition can't be met, then it needs to be revisited.
So is what you're saying then, Michael, is have to update the plot plan?
Yeah, that corner right there, if you go to the actual subdivision plat, what he just highlighted would need to be an easement area for access, and then the other portion of this is that the property owner that would be benefiting from that easement is able to work with the contact that they have made, because obviously, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but I would assume that you had contacted that property owner because you're installing that access drive. Am I correct there?
Yes, the Dickinson property? Yeah.
Yes. So working with the Jameson's property owner to get a reciprocal easement for this property owner so that they can also use that access, I think is a reasonable request, especially given the investment you're making to put in your access drive. So I think that's a very plausible way to move forward, and I can't see, again, I don't want to speak for that private property owner, but obviously they're going to be driving across it as well. So it's not like it encumbers their property in any negative way, because it is just being used as access, right? It's not, they're not proposing a building, and clearly they're going to be driving across there to get into their property. So I think it's an elegant solution to a really tough problem given the grades.
Does that answer?
Does that make sense, everyone?
Michael, does that need to be included in the motion tonight or in the action?
Yeah, I can create a, I can assist with that finding when it comes time.
Okay.
But the planning commission wants to add that, so I'll be ready if and when you guys want to get into motions.
Okay.
Anybody else?
So there's not an alley there currently, right?
No.
And their property is, they're driving on your property to get to theirs,
Yes.
but they're proposing to require you to give them an alley now?
Not to give them an alley, but some access back there. Yeah, it's.
Is that common on something like this?
I can say in other cities, I would say it's not common. I think the problem, what I see, and I don't want to take the other side, but people have used that property when it was even railroad property for so many years that we don't want to deny them, because there is a gate back there that at 225. Right? I mean, I know it's there. So we just need to find a way to be able to accommodate them in that regard.
It's almost like a grandfather.
Yes.
They've been doing it for so long.
They've been doing it for so
You
long.
don't have a problem doing that?
No, I think there are a number of solutions that we can come up with that will give her access to the back that would not change our plan in any way. It's not going to change drainage. It's not going to change, I mean, I look at a variety of things here. We might lose a parking space, I mean, potentially, or two, if we came in through the curb cut off of Chestnut. But we need to look at that grade. That's, according to David, we need to look at that grade. Because if it's too steep and she's got a food truck, it's going to be a little tough to get down that, so we need to look. I mean, I've walked that property so many times, I don't think it doesn't seem that much of a grade.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Tom had a question earlier.
What's that?
Tom had a question there?
I just want to speak if it's public comment.
Any other questions before we move on here? Okay, you can sit down and
Thank you.
staff report. You got a staff report for us?
Do I get to comment?
I don't think he heard you.
I think Tom wants to make.
Tom?
Good evening, Commissioners. Tom Murphy with Muller Murphy Funeral and Trinidad Times TV. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I didn't know what was happening tonight. In a matter of full disclosure, my wife works for Toyota, so I might be a little bit biased. When the Toyota store was first being presented, I got up and spoke because there was someone here saying that, the dealerships used to be on the outside of town. Well, that's not true. Even I know that. And I've been here since the 1980s. And interestingly enough, I was given some historical documents by Ron Passarelli, who has since passed away. And inside were some booklets for the rodeo, for the Labor Day parade from 1968 and 1969. I loaned them to Ed Grego, and they're really beautiful. But they show all the dealerships, as you lifelong residents know. So the point of that is the dealerships were in historic Trinidad. And my history here, I own the Chappelle House, which is also known as Muller Murphy Funeral Home. We've owned it since 1981. And we got in a little bit of trouble with some people in the community because when we bought it, nothing had been done to it, and you literally could put a candle upstairs and blow out. So one of the first jobs that I got was knocking down the plaster in some of the rooms upstairs and hauling it all out and redoing it. So what we did, though, what my father did is he made the windows smaller. So if you drive by and you look at the upper windows, they would be like the courthouse. They'd be the giant windows. Back in the 1980s, we couldn't heat our place if we'd kept those windows. So, and I understand better than most how emotional historic preservation is to some people, especially with our streets and things like that. But owning a historic building and practically trying to keep it afloat, you have to deal with the reality of making some adjustments. And at one point, we passed historic preservation here in 2002, and myself and 4 other people repealed it because they could fine and imprison people.
Right.
So there's a line where you're like, I'm all for trying to do it well, but what Toyota has done for my family and for a lot of people in this community is huge, and I'll explain that in a second. But to address your one of the things that you addressed with Mr. Lamb, my wife is the sales manager. They sell cars all over the country. They have people getting in cars and driving them to Florida, driving them to Oregon, driving them wherever. This isn't just selling to people the cars here. This is nationwide, and it's huge. 10 years ago, though, when the economy killed off the newspaper and my wife was jobless, she ended up interviewing for a job at Mount Carmel, and she almost took it. But the last interview was with Jay Schmino, and he said, "No, I want you to go sell cars." And she's like, "I don't want to sell cars." And Jay said, "Don't poo-poo the car business. You can make a lot of money." She's done very, very well. Toyota has done very, very well for this community. And it's almost making me a little bit emotional, but if you go over there now, there are a lot of women that work there. They're making far more money over there than they would anywhere else. And they're selling cars. And those are opportunities because Jay Schmino and Lisa Camarillo and this group has provided that. If nothing else, it's the jobs that they're going to provide. And every time I see Jay, I thank him because he saved us. He didn't write us a check. He gave Paula a job and she did it herself. But it was because of Toyota and this group that provide these jobs and this economic opportunity that every time I see him, I just say, thank you, Jay. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
I want to make a couple more,
Staff?
I just had a couple more
Go
quick
ahead.
things. So I wanted to talk a little bit about communication. I could have saved everyone in here a lot of time and effort if they would have just bought our building. It was a dealership back in the day. It used to be the Cadillac Buick dealership in the 1930s. So we could have just, not all, we could have saved some time tonight. I just want to say that I do think, I'm torn, because I have a lot of respect for the historical aspects of this town, but I also realize that, it takes progress, and we need, I think that that would be a great addition. I am a neighbor, and I think that they've met and answered the questions that I had. And I think that they're doing well by this city, and I would put my vote towards it.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience want to come forward?
Chair, we have several people online. I don't know if there's anyone who wishes to speak.
Michael? Okay.
Okay, I think we're good. No one's raising their hand.
All right.
Thank you, Chair.
I'd like to say something too. We're talking about what Mr. Murphy just talked about. We also have, right on Main Street, we had car dealerships on both sides of Main Street. Right there where Mikey's is now, there was a dealership there. Across the street was a Nash and Studebaker dealership where Mrs. Bolton owns. So there was dealerships all the way down, different places in Trinidad which you consider historical. So now, if staff have anything to say?
Just a couple of things, just for clarity. The property is zoned historic preservation, which allows for automobile service as a use by right. It, however, calls for a conditional use for vehicle sales. So really, if they wanted to open it as completely a service location, they could do that at this point, but they're wanting to stimulate the economy with sales as well. I believe that the applicant has addressed all of the issues that are considerations for conditional use, including site and access and circulation. They've addressed the visual with landscaping, and they've also addressed any glare with their limited lighting that they're proposing. The plat obviously would have to be amended to indicate the access onto for the neighboring property. And then the other final item that needs to be addressed is payment in lieu of open space requirements that have not been identified by the applicant yet, or they could identify some open space that would have to be dedicated to the city as part of this application. That's it.
Can you run by that last little bit about the open space?
So all subdivisions require either parkland dedication or payment in lieu of parkland dedication.
Okay.
And it's actually required of residential and commercial development. The commercial development, I'm not going to remember the percentage off the top of my head, but I'm not sure that they have land in this area that's that would be what they would want to dedicate for open space. So they can propose a payment in lieu of that open space requirement. And that would have to be accepted by City Council through the final plat process.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Anyone? I know Tom already spoke, and we kind of got off of hearing, but anyone for or against this application can come forward now. I think everybody's talked already. So at this time here, I'll close the hearing. Commissioners, what is your recommendations? And Mr. Garman's going to help you.
Yeah, no. I was this is our discussion between ourselves, right? That's the point of the meeting. What we had talked about, or were we to make a motion that we're to ask them to adhere to the design standards of the historic preservation area, what would that look like?
Well,
I mean, in terms of
the standards would be what the standards are for the historical
They're
preservation
outlined
district.
in our municipal code what the standards are.
well, I mean, a specific. Okay,
Yeah,
Michael.
So your code does speak to permitted materials and not permitted materials. My suggestion on if you're worried about the materials or a facade, to provide direction to the applicant to amend that elevation. So there's obviously 4 elevations of the building. So if there's a particular elevation that gives you concern, that would be the correct way to address that tonight. You could also continue to allow them to do updates to the facade and bring it back in front of the Planning, Zoning, and Variance Commission. But I would strongly recommend that if you have concerns about the materials on the building, that those materials be identified so that the applicant has direction to amend their design if that's the case.
Okay.
So if there's something in particular that you're concerned about, I would, the correct way, north, west, east, south facade. And they could probably bring that model back up, but that would be the appropriate way. So if there's a particular material that causes concern, that's how you would identify it.
Okay. And probably the materials that are not allowed or that aren't, that the code is prohibiting would be the metal on the fascia of the building.
So my understanding is that is a suggestion. You can't enforce that. There's no, am I right? You cannot force someone to use those materials. You can just suggest it.
It's encouraged, strongly
It's
encouraged.
encouraged, right, but there's nothing to stop them or anyone else, correct?
That's true.
Basically, I think it could come back to the word recommend.
Right. But if we put it as a
Right.
condition, then it's not a recommendation, it's enforcing, right?
So if the commission wants to come up with, along with Mr. Yarman helping us, come up with, and with, to include staff recommendations, what Mrs. Garrett just gave us, and we can come up with a so
here's the code. Here's the code section that you're referring to. This is the historic preservation, architectural, and design standards. So this is the section. So long blank walls. These are the materials that stone, wood, brick, smooth face concrete, corrugated metal, and prefabricated metal panels. So it's not that metal is not allowed, it's just the corrugated metal or prefabricated metal panels, if that makes sense. So, these are the standards that you're looking at. So if any of these three materials are prohibited, so I think you can make a motion to include that no smooth face concrete, corrugated metal, or prefabricated metal panels be allowed in the structure. And then you would meet the architectural standard that you're concerned about. Does that make sense to the commission?
yes.
Somewhat. So is the brushed metal of the facade that is the front of the building, is that allowed or not allowed? If we made a condition that they work within the design standards of that, would that metal be allowed?
So I don't believe, and I guess I would ask the applicant to pull back up that material list that they had in their application. Would probably be the easiest thing to do real quick, but I don't believe, and the applicant might be able to speak to this, that any of those metal panels are prefabricated metal panels or corrugated metal, or either of those materials being used.
I can go ahead and speak. I know you're during your discussion, but okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it's important to emphasize when you look at those examples you gave, a prefabricated metal panel, it's purely that, it's bent metal with any kind of unreinforcement behind it, so it does get easily damaged. The panels that we're proposing, or the structure that we're proposing, is an aluminum composite panel, so it's a much larger aluminum panel that's reinforced and structurally sound behind it. So that way we can actually follow the same modules as what our storefront is down below to mimic that same kind of aesthetic and modular aspect. Let's say it's different. It's a metal material, but it's differentiated from, say, a prefabricated metal panel as shown in the code section.
Thank you.
Well, I need a,
Well, okay, so we have to do a CUP for to sell cars. So does somebody want to make a motion to? Huh?
I'll go ahead and make that motion. And the motion that I'm more concerned about is the people access to their back part of their building.
We're gonna have to include that with the staff report,
Yeah.
and then that would be, access to the properties.
So let me surmise what I've heard from the commission as the 3 conditions of approval. Your first condition of approval is that the applicant provide access to 225 Elm Street. Staff, could you confirm that that was the address on the letter, 225 Elm?
That is, and I sent you a copy of the letter, Michael, by text, so you should have that in your files.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So the first condition would be, the first 2 conditions apply to subdivision. So it would be that the applicant work with 225 Elm and the neighboring property owner to provide adequate access to the rear of that property and plat access easements as required. Second is that the Planning Commission recommend payment in lieu of open space for subdivision. And then the third, that I haven't heard complete consent from the Planning Commission, but I've heard concerns, is that the last one would be up for the CUP, that the final plans do not include any of the prohibited materials. That would be in 1467C, prohibited materials. And that would be the CUP condition. So you have 3 conditions there. The material one would be the one that I think if you were to add, I would maybe add a little bit of discussion because I've only heard one comment on that. If that makes sense.
So does the materials that they have laid out here, do they meet requirements?
So,
But they
Michael,
spoke
can
and
you
said
show us
that,
that prohibited material listing?
Do we want to can we pull up the material list one more time, please?
I have this material, yeah.
In the code? Yeah, okay. And Michael, can you zoom in just a little bit, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Thank you for doing that.
So it's really, there is a prohibition on smooth face concrete, concrete block, metal, or vinyl siding and materials that are listed above. So I think at the final review, again, the prefabricated metal panels, again, I've dealt with this in similar, Salina, where I was combat director, had a similar prohibition against this. And they are correct that the concern about these prefabricated metal panels is, as you can even see in this example, they bent very easily and are damaged. And a lot of folks use the corrugated metal or the prefab metal panels to cover up cornices or other detailed portions of buildings in historic districts, and then they decay very rapidly. So one other thing I would make sure is on that rear elevation that the applicant isn't proposing any smooth face concrete on the bottom half of that structure. I didn't think they were, but I didn't get a good enough look at it, I guess, to ensure that that's not the case. But again, I think you can direct staff to ensure that these 3 prohibited materials are not included in their final design submittal.
And we don't.
So
Right.
this one right here is not. I can't read it because it's too small, so I don't want to.
That is a like decking material to be used for like a trash enclosure.
So what is the material for the back of the building?
That is a insulated metal panel.
Okay.
So it would be a stippled, textured, similar to like a stucco almost.
Okay. So there's no materials on here that are.
Correct.
okay. I need to know. I need a.
We need a motion.
I made that motion.
Yeah, but you gotta stipulate what you're making.
Yeah, that's what we were getting ready to do until he started. okay?
So if you made a motion, the way I can do it, I'll read in the three, again, just to be clear, I'll read in the three recommended conditions that I heard from you, and then you can follow out with a second to add those conditions of approval if you would like. So I've already heard a motion, so the conditions that I've heard is for the subdivision plat to provide adequate easement so that 225 Elm has access to the rear of the property, that the Planning Zoning and Variance Commission recommend payment in lieu to the City Council in lieu of open space, and finally that for this conditional use approval that the applicant submit a final material list that is in performance of 1467 C. Historic preservation design standards. So with that, if you want to add those three conditions, you can, what I would recommend is that the motion includes the staff recommended conditions.
So can I ask a question? Does the open space have to be adjacent property?
No.
Okay, because again, we're working with the city on expanding Chimino Park and with the diocese, and then we're also working over at the Hilton to put in garden areas and things like that. So what I'd ask is, if it would be either or, we could pay for it or provide, open space, because there's a lot of open space right now that we're working with the city on, but it's not adjacent. If that's not required, I think we're going to more than provide a lot of open space.
So for that condition, if we can make it a recommendation to either make the payment in lieu of or provide adequate open space pursuant to our municipal code as a stipulation.
Is there a size criteria?
Yeah, it's all.
Okay, so it's a mathematical formula based
There
on
is,
size.
yeah.
So if it's already in there, do we need to put it in the condition? It's not in the condition, it's required.
It's you deciding which way it's going to be. So maybe, Michael, I don't know that even needs to be a condition. It's just a requirement that they work with us on that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, for non-residential development, it's an area not less than 8% of the total subdivisions. So.
Okay. So yes, that's already a requirement. So I don't think that needs to be one of the stipulations.
Okay.
Clear as mud.
Okay, clear as mud, so.
So you want me to read, I'll do the conditions one more
So your
time.
motion would be, go ahead, Mr. Martin.
Well,
Your motion would be,
motion would be that the real thing that I'm worried about, and not worried about, but I would like to see happen and make sure they're going to be able to work with that, is them people on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Okay. And if we could allow that, if they could allow that and work with them people on Elm Street, I don't think the rest of it, they're going to meet the historical preservation anyhow. So I don't think that's a problem, And so I move that we go ahead and approve this.
with the staff
With the
recommendations
stipulation.
also?
Yeah.
That they meet the historical preservation, and also that they work with Tess, what's Tess' last name?
Well,
Emsley.
225 Elm.
225 L. And then also provide a final materials list. That was the
Right.
other one.
And that's my motion.
Does that include everything?
I believe so.
I think it does too.
Okay. Second, who has a second?
I second it.
Second, roll call.
Monterano,
Yes.
Armijo,
Yes.
Rolo,
Yes.
Norris,
Yes.
Leone.
Yes. Done. Okay.
Thank you.
I really like the low light aspect. That's going to be very valuable. Thank you. And thank you for the brick. I mean, take what you can get.
Anything else board members want to bring up?
Which is so
Staff?
common here.
Not this evening.
Nothing?
Nothing this
Okay.
evening. Oh, I take that back. Would planning commission consider a special meeting in October if necessary? And let me tell you why. The Chronicle News has changed their deadline requirements. And so we're in this little gap area where we had some lingering applications, but they didn't get noticed on time to make the October meeting. Still waiting for a little bit of stuff, but I would rather not push them all the way to November if possible.
Right.
So would you be agreeable to 2 meetings in October if necessary? And that's provided that we get.
I don't have a problem.
I may be remote.
That's fine.
I'm having a grandbaby.
Oh, congratulations. John, you would have a problem?
No, I do not have a
Okay.
problem with that, but I'm up for whatever. So would I be a part of that?
Yeah. Yeah, he'd still be a part of that.
Until those
That's why they're
seats are
having it.
filled?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the way they're having it.
So we can't vote on ourselves though?
No.
So,
What do you mean you can't vote on yourself? So, city council's extended Danielle's and your term until the vacancies are filled so that we have a nice complement of members on this board. So if by this October date, you're either replaced or reappointed, you'll be here if you're reappointed. If you're replaced, then you won't, but we appreciate you continuing on.
so when will we know that?
October, let me think about this for a second. October the 13th is when city council would do interviews, and then they would appoint the second meeting in October. So it would be before that proposed special meeting. in
So do
October.
they have to write any kind of letter in or
They have to do a citizen interest form again.
write a
And
letter?
then are they going to have to present themselves to the council?
Yes.
And it's kind of interview format. I mean,
Yes.
or not interview, I mean, because I went there just to meet them and no, you're presenting, your qualifications, etc.
Okay.
But I do appreciate both of you continuing on. So
You'll
we
send
have
us
full
when their meeting will be?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, reports. I have one report. I did represent planning and zoning. At that time there, Chris Hall did too for the Fernandez dedication at North Lake. And there was a lot of people there. I didn't count them all. I don't think anybody at City Hall was working that day.
I was.
But anyway, it was everybody was there, and our city manager can tell you, it was really nice for Mr. Fernandez. His brother was there, his wife, the plaque that was put up there, and everything that was done there, it looked like it was done A1. And that's all I have to say. Commissioner reports? Any commissioner reports?
I like that First Street. It's really coming out nice.
Thank you. They're ahead of schedule, and so we're very proud of the work that's being done there.
Yeah, I'm real pleased with that.
And it came in under budget, so that's good for our taxpayers.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Planning director, Audra? Or nothing?
I don't have anything to say.
Are you the new director?
No.
Oh.
You just said the word tonight.
Is Chris still here?
No.
Okay.
Anything else? Nothing? Do you have a motion?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Materano,
Yes.
Armijo,
Yes.
Rolo,
Yes.
Norris,
Yes.
Leone.
Yes.